I worked as a park ranger in northern Alaska for years from when I was in my early 20s until my mid-30s. At first, when I took the job, I was trying to escape, but over time I learned to love it. The endless wilderness, the snow-capped mountains, the muffled way everything sounded during blizzards. With no light pollution, the stars up there looked like tiny chips of diamond. And during the winter, the northern lights roll in, twisting and shimmering in strange alien colors. But a few years ago, things got much worse. People up here have started to go missing at an alarming rate, and I started having strange experiences around the park and at the nature preserve. One of these strangest parts of my story started on a freezing dark night in 2018. I was on a snowmobile out in a terrible blizzard. The conditions were nearly to the point of being impassable. The snow was falling so thick and fast that it looked like a moving, shimmering wall of white on all sides of me. Another ranger, a huge, lumbering man named Ace Acosta, pulled up behind me on a second snowmobile. I looked at him, standing 6'6" with majestic peaks stretching up into the night sky, and thought about what a great picture this would make. As I was looking around, I saw the faint tracks in the snow. Ace's snowmobile lights were pointed in their direction, and I had been standing almost on top of them without realizing it, which is fairly easy to do when a few inches of snow were falling every hour. At first, I thought it was the frozen tracks of an injured animal. I saw the drops of blood as soaked into the superficial ice first. Following their direction with my eyes, I realized that they were footprints pressed into the frozen crust, leading away from me and towards the flat stretch of the tundra. I squinted, getting down on my knees and leaning inwards. I didn't want to trample the tracks. I quickly realized that I was looking at human footprints. Naked human footprints. But who would be out here in December in negative 40-degree winds without shoes? They would die rapidly out here. And just for me to drive across the tundra on a snowmobile required me to wear 3 jackets, long johns, snow pants, thick jeans, a ski mask, and multiple layers of socks and gloves with hand warmers. I wore special waterproof boots with composite toes that wouldn't freeze like steel toes. And despite all of this, I was still cold. I moved forward and saw handprints mixed in with the footprints, all of them bloody. The ice was thick enough to slice open human hands and feet undoubtedly. The logical conclusion was unshakable. Someone had crawled through here, maybe naked on all fours, and their frozen body would be somewhere up ahead. I sighed, turning to Acosta. He still stood in the same position, his face covered in a red scarf with only his eyes showing. I saw one ice-covered eyebrow raised questioningly. "I think we got us a body somewhere nearby," I said, getting back on my snowmobile and starting it. He did the same. "What kind of freaked out tweaker would be walking around here without clothes on?" Ace asked in his deep baritone. "Man, I need a hit of whatever that guy's on. I've got 2 sweaters and 2 winter jackets on and I'm still cold." Kelton, what do you say?" He started elbowing me jokingly. I frowned, not responding. Ace always had a smart aleck remark. He was next to me when I was interviewed for this job originally, down at the recruitment center in Washington State. The old lady doing the interviewing was a bloodless, angry-looking specimen of a woman, with huge glasses that magnified her eyes twice over. She spat out each question like a drill sergeant, talking to fresh meat in the army. "Are you a member of any organized religion?" she had asked brusquely. Ace shook his head. "No, ma'am, but I am a member of a disorganized religion," he said. "We call ourselves the servants of the old ones. We're waiting for the ancient reptilian gods at the bottom of the ocean to awaken. So far, however, they haven't responded to any of our attacks. I thought about this as I revved the engine twice, a sign that I was about to pull off and that he should stay close. We took off, going slow and following the tracks as close as possible without destroying them. But they just kept on going. The bloodstains seeming to grow fainter as we moved forward. And strangely enough, the hand and footprints also started getting longer, as if someone were running on all fours and speeding up. We were nearing the beginning of the forest of evergreens when I saw a white flash just up ahead. The thing that ran from us was humanoid, but I knew at once that it was no person. It ran on hands and feet, totally naked, its skin a pale, lifeless white color. It turned its head towards the lights of these snowmobiles briefly. I saw a hairless creature with skin that clung tightly to its simian body, its lips permanently pulled back from its mouth as if they were eaten away. Underneath it showed mottled black and red gums covered in thick and clotted blood. Its nose appeared as little more than 2 irregular holes, and its eyes, they reflected the light of the snowmobiles, like the eyes of a raccoon or a possum. They were huge and sunken in its starving and monstrous face, and I saw what was leaving the bloody trails. The creature was, as far as I could tell, totally uninjured. In its permanently grinning mouth between rows of crooked, sharp, and blood-stained teeth, it held the body of an infant. The baby's head lolled from side to side, the neck seemingly broken, and blood dripped constantly from its mouth and nose. It had deep puncture marks in its tiny parka, half rings of teeth marks that must have broken its ribs. The blood stains on the snow were becoming fainter, because the heart was no longer pumping in the body of the one leaving them. I had a loaded rifle inside of my snowmobile, and I kept a 12-gauge shotgun slung around my back, mostly in case of bear or moose attack. I always kept the shotgun loaded with slugs, which were, in my experience, the most versatile ammunition for stopping any large animal. The 308 might take down a polar bear, at least with a good headshot, or it might just piss it off on a bad day. But a shotgun slug to the head or heart will stop any bear or moose in its tracks. Of course, this was no polar bear ahead of me. For all I knew, it was something far worse. I looked down at the speedometer to see that I was going 20 miles an hour, in the dark and in a blizzard. And yet this strange humanoid creature was still losing us. His seemingly never-ending store of energy still sending it forward at a superhuman speed. Its pale, bony legs and arms pumped back and forth so fast that they were just a blur. It kept its sharp teeth around the nape of the dead infant's neck, like a mother cat carrying its young. I kept one hand on the steering wheel while trying to free the strap of my shotgun over my head. I slowed down below 20 and the creature responded by going even faster. I was making a break for the mountain forest that started only a few hundred feet away. I got the gun free and quickly stopped the snowmobile and raised it. I centered the sights, taking a deep breath to steady myself, and I fired. I missed, though I don't know by how much. Shotguns had the drawback of being significantly less accurate at farther distances than the rifle. But by the time that I got the 308 out, I knew the creature would have long since disappeared in the thick brush and trees. By this point, Ace had also stopped and opened fire, but the creature had already gone. "Holy crap," Ace screamed. "That thing was fast. I can't believe he got away after all that." He heaved a deep sigh. "I think we better go find out where he got that baby from," I said. "We might have a lot more corpses on our hands than we realize." We found a radio in the snowmobile and messaged in what had happened, or at least the basic gist of it. I left out the part about the naked half-human abomination and said that it was an unknown animal. There wasn't much for law enforcement up in these parts because, there were barely any people. The rangers, as well as fish and wildlife agents, regularly worked to be police officers in small towns. At least, those that had police officers. Dozens of the local tribal villages had no police at all. These people would come to forest agents and fish and wildlife agents most of all, and were always some of the county's friendliest and most helpful residents. And by the time that we got back to the original bloodstained footprints, the snow had covered up the tracks completely. However, based on the direction that the creature had been going and where the tracks had come from, I thought that I knew where it might have started. Following the path in a nearly straight line led to the Letna Peak trailer park. Ace and I drove off at max speed across the rolling hills and flat plains, the snow coming faster and heavier now. They say Eskimos have dozens of words for snow, and after being a ranger up here, I can say that I've seen every variation of it 1,000 times. This was turning into the kind that was wet with huge flakes, and tended to stick to everything. We would probably have to find refuge soon, especially if it got any heavier. I heard the screaming before I saw the commotion. As we came around the sharp right turn where the dirt road turned into the trailer park, I saw dozens of people out, flitting like gnats around one of the trailers at the back corner of the park. All the lights were on in that particular trailer, and I saw one woman comforting another who was bent over and crying. Even though almost everybody knew us here, I pulled out my badge identifying me as a federal law enforcement officer. Up here, all the rangers were technically federal agents, allowed to carry guns and make arrests like typical police, except we were licensed under the Department of the Interior rather than under state law enforcement agencies. I ran into the trailer, and after one long glance around the place, I knew that there was no need to call for any ambulances. Ace followed close behind me, his heavy thudding footsteps shaking the trailer slightly as he ascended the steps. We said nothing for a long moment. The entire family was dead. There was blood everywhere, even spotting the ceilings. Most of it had frozen in the cold, and I wondered how long the door had been left open. Body parts were scattered across the floor, an arm in the corner of the room, a head standing up on the kitchen counter, even a random tooth embedded into the sheetrock. The savagery was brutal, and the amount of strength required to carry out such an attack must have been extraordinary. I think we're going to need a lot more people on this than just you and me, Ace said. I nodded, already bone tired. There was so much more work to do tonight before I could go to sleep. We found both state and federal authorities in the area. Since much of the land was tribally owned, we had to deal with multiple branches. Eventually, we got CSI out there in the middle of a snowstorm, though they had to come from over 3 hours away. We just secured the scene while we waited, constantly being brought into neighboring trailers where townsfolk would tell us the latest gossip. They also brought us hot coffee and tried to milk us for any information that we might have, as they usually did in such situations. No, Maggie, honest, Ace was saying to one old lady wrapped up in an ancient fur coat. I don't know any more about it than you do. You can be sure that you would know if I did. By that point, police cars were slowly pulling in one by one. Ace and I told them a simplified version of the night's events, said goodnight, and left the scene to them. I went home and took a scalding hot shower, trying to force the night's coldness out of my bones. And then I slept deeply, though I had nightmares of that creature's face turning to me, holding a dead baby in its mouth and marking me with its emotionless, reflective eyes. I didn't know it then, but that would be the last time I would sleep in a bed for many days. The state police assigned us an officer the next day, stating that they wanted an official representative of their interests involved in the case. It was by this point a fairly high priority case. We didn't even have many assaults or robberies up here, less likely murders, and the murder of an entire family really stirred up the locals. The fact that the CSI techs couldn't make heads or tails of it made it even worse. They hadn't even agreed on whether it was done by humans or animals, or a combination of the two, like men with fighting dogs who went berserk. With no leads, they wanted us to go back to where we had seen the creature the previous night, and to see what we could find. The police officer would be tagging us. A woman named Officer Melinda Jansen had the look of someone who had just started a new job and doesn't realize how terrible it is yet. She was all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and when she shook my hand, she nearly crushed the bones together under her iron grip. I saw Ace wince slightly when he shook her hand too. When she turned her back, she looked at me with one eyebrow raised, as if he were saying, "What can you do?" It didn't take us long to find the spot from the previous night. When we got close to the forest where the creature had disappeared, I saw a branch that had been hit by a shotgun blast, and I knew that we were right on the money. In the daytime, I saw that there was a slight curving trail through the trees here, maybe an old deer trail. It was just wide enough for us to take our snowmobiles through if we went slow. Occasionally, I would have to get off, being in the lead, and move large branches that lay across the path. But overall, it was faster going than I had expected. The trail followed across the top of a rolling hill, went down and then spiraled up around a mountain. We were high now, at least 7,000 feet above sea level, and the view went on for hundreds of miles. It was breathtaking, seeing the frozen white landscape below us, mountains lining one horizon and the Arctic Ocean on another. A couple hundred feet ahead of us, however, the trail just stopped. I saw an opening in the mountain, slowly bringing my snowmobile up. I looked into it and saw what looked like naturally formed stone hallways. The hall sloped down at a steep angle without stairs. An eerie silence radiated from the gradually thickening darkness. The other two snowmobiles cut out right behind mine, and Officer Jansen came walking up, flicking on her LED headlamp. Immediately, I saw a strip of white blue cloth. I walked forward and bending down to confirm what I had already suspected, that this was a piece of the missing infant's clothing. That looks like more than enough cause for me. Let's do this, Jansen said. I would like to be back before sundown. She kept walking without waiting for confirmation. Ace and I slung on our packs and turned on our headlamps. I tried using the radios and sat phone to share our location, but neither was working. The bright artificial lights showed that the natural stone walls of the hall just kept on descending into the mountain. A warm breeze blew past me, an acrid, sulfuric smell following in its wake. This is just a body recovery mission at this point, I whispered to Ace, giving Officer Jansen a wide space so that I could talk. So why are we potentially risking our lives here? We should be waiting for backup. We both know that that infant is dead. I mean, it has been for a while. You know what I think? Ace whispered conspiratorially, before a low shriek stopped us all in our tracks and ended conversation. I never did get to hear what he thought. By this point, it was much warmer than it had been outside, and I had the urge to start stripping off jackets. The shrieking had intensified, and it was now being answered by dozens of others that surrounded further away in the stone walls. Officer Jansen had pulled out her gun, which I saw with some astonishment was a .454 Ruger, a large Calibur gun with good stopping power. I saw enough magazines strapped around her hips to decimate an entire herd of buffalo. I also pulled off my shotgun.
Why is it gotta be fucking buffalo? Because she's native? What the fuck, bro?
Do you have any idea what we're up against? I asked her. Ace was right behind us, his shotgun already cocked and loaded. the muzzle pointed downwards. I was sweating heavily by this point. The air in the tunnel just kept on getting warmer. It felt like I was walking into a sauna. Thin clouds of mist and droplets of hot condensation clung to these smooth granite ceilings. The hall continued to descend at the same steep rate, but now I could see something at the bottom. A light. Not much more than you, really, Officer Jansen said with a slight sneer. My only advice is to shoot first and ask questions later. Kill anything that moves. This place has taken a lot of people already. People who were too fat and slow to watch their own backs. I squinted as I examined the lights. They seemed to emanate from some sort of organism growing on the stone surface. It wasn't electrical lights, and it certainly wasn't natural sunlight. It glowed like the lights of millions of fireflies, a purplish blue color that painted the granite floors and walls in a totally different light. We were walking as quietly as possible by this point, but I still hadn't seen anyone. We reached the bottom of these stone halls, where strange mushrooms glowed in the darkness, their mycelium giving out that black-like color everywhere as it stretched across the threshold of the opening. I turned off my LED, seeing my comrades do the same, and then I poked my head through, looking back and forth. I saw more of those creatures from before, their lips missing, their skin pale, their eyes huge and rabid. They constantly twisted and snapped their heads to the left or right, as if hearing something only they could perceive. Two were dragging an elk that they had torn down the middle. Another was dragging an old man's body forward by the upraised legs. I saw the old man's missing head, his wrinkled hands trailing behind the body. I watched where all this activity was headed, and then I gasped. A huge insectile monster sat lazily against the stone wall as these creatures brought it meat. The monster was so fat that I wasn't even sure that it could stand up. It had a blood-red, chitinous exterior with a hood like a cobra's that extended around its head. Its teeth trembled together constantly as it shoved more offerings into its mouth, scenting blood gushing forward in thick clotted rivulets that dripped down its chin. Its long, thin arms had a sharp knife-like digits, and its 6 legs branched like those of a praying mantis, splayed out on each side of its body, shining a dark red color in the strange light of the chamber. Its belly stretched far in front of its body, and with horror, I saw it drop a cluster of eggs, each as big as a dog. Their surfaces writhed and trembled, looking tight and ready to burst at any moment. The creatures that fed and cared for this monster rushed over, dragging the eggs to the corner of the warm chamber. I saw that there were dozens more of them over there, and that some had already hatched. Whatever that monster was, it had already given birth, and now those things were walking around, totally free to kill anything or anyone they wanted. This was the nightmare that took place years ago when I was a park ranger. I still remember standing there feeling disassociated and strange as I looked down on the eerie scene below us. Oh God in heaven, Ace whispered in the purple light of the cave. Before us, the bright red hand shot forward and grabbed the body of the headless man. It lifted the corpse up with ease. I watched the beast open its jaw wide enough to throw the corpse in without difficulty. Snapping its mouth shut, it sprayed more red down its face and across the eroded stone floor in front of it. Dark red stains emanated across the floor from 20 feet in front of the creature, looking like clotted Rorschach ink blocks in the fetid cave. We need to go deeper in, Jansen said, looking from me to Ace with a serious frown on her face. You insane? Ace said. Do you want to die? There could be thousands of those things down there. But the decision was quickly taken out of our hands as we heard screaming, a young, high-pitched voice. We all looked down at once and saw the white humanoid mutants dragging out a young boy, one that I recognized from pictures on the trailer park crime scene wall. He had cuts and scrapes all over and he was shivering, either from hypothermia or fear or both, but he was alive. His eyes were huge as he was dragged forward by his small hands, towards the great red insectile beast in the corner. Dang it, I whispered, looking at Ace and Jansen. Okay, Jansen and I will take point positions. Ace, you guard the rear. We will form a triangle and start shooting. When one reloads, the other two cover. Ace, you need to swing back and periodically check our backs to make sure that there's no ambush. Now, let's go. They didn't question my command. Neither of them had time to. To save the boy, we needed to move immediately. We started down these smooth stone floors, only a couple of 100 feet away from unknown numbers of enemies. I fired first, aiming my shotgun at the group of mutants nearest to me as quickly as I could pull the trigger. The first shot made the chest to run open, kept going and hit another in the leg, and ended up blowing chips of stone from the wall behind them. I saw it all in slow motion, my adrenaline pumping and the heightened awareness of battle taking hold. The second shot hit the nearest one in the head. It exploded like a shattering vase, bits of blood and bone flying out in all directions. I saw the one holding the boy drop his Jansen and hit it with a shot from the Ruger. It was an amazing shot, missing the boy entirely and taking out the head of the creature. It looked fairly risky, especially with the pistol, but I could tell that she had experience and marksmanship. And yet personally, I never would have tried from that distance with a hostage in tow, with anything less than a rifle. The chance of blowing the hostage's head off seemed far too great. It made me wonder about her impulse control and risk-taking mindset. Who was this woman after all? The white mutant continued holding the boy's hand for a second, standing on its feet as its mutilated half-destroyed head kept pumping sprays of red in the air. And then it fell, crumpling slowly to the floor. The black beast in the corner appeared enraged by this point. It gave off a banshee wail that sent out powerful blasts of sound, rising and falling in distinct waves. It sounded like a choked, much deeper version of a steam whistle. Instinctually, I wanted to drop my gun and cover my ears to stop the painful shrieking. It seemed even louder than the gunshots, something that I would have said was impossible before hearing it. And worse than all that, the beast was rising to its feet. While it looked fat and slow, and while I knew it to be full of eggs since we had seen it lay some, it turned out to be much faster than all of us would have expected. It had a huge, blood-red belly, but it moved with the grace and speed of a cat. It rose on its 6 legs, its upper body sticking up from the lower insectile carapace like some sort of demented centaur. Its branched legs skittered forward in a centipede-like motion that gave me an instinctive revulsion. But it wasn't running towards us. It was moving away from the gunfighter towards a huge entrance. As it went, it grabbed the boy with its inhumanly long and thin arms. I feared that it would open its giant maw and pop it inside, and that would be the last that we would ever see of it. But it didn't. It disappeared, making that shrieking and steam whistle cry as it went. My ears were ringing so badly from all the gunshots, the echoes of the gunshots and the cries of the beast, that I was afraid that I had gone deaf for a moment. Ace stood in front of me, moving his lips, but I couldn't tell what he was saying. "What?" I screamed. My hearing slowly returned. "We have to follow the boy," he said. "We can't lose his trail." I knew that he was right. The existence of a live hostage had totally changed the situation. We had no backup coming and no way to call for help. We would have to take him ourselves. It seemed an insane proposition, and the creatures here vastly outnumbered us, but letting a hostage die was not an option. Yeah, no crap, I said gloomily. I sighed deeply. We had more ammo on the snowmobiles. I had filled my pockets with extra slugs, but I hadn't expected this. Ace was likely in a similar situation. We faced the choice of either going back and trying to grab as much ammo as we could, and possibly losing the hostage, or going forward and running the risk of using up all of our ammo, which was, after all, a risk either way, since we had no idea how many of those things lived in the tunnels. I saw the same thoughts running through his mind as he looked back toward these snowmobiles and then forward to the tunnels. Let's go, I said, motioning for us to go forward. We can't risk losing the trail. We'll put breadcrumbs down as we go, metaphorically. Slice off tiny pieces of a jacket or something so that we can find our way back. Based on how many of those things I saw, he responded, I think we'll be able to just follow the empty shell casings alone. Jansen had already started running forward by this point, and we had to sprint to keep up. We ran past the eggs, some empty and others throbbing with inner life. I saw the one nearest to me pulsating with blood red veins, a thin, luminous skin revealing the silhouettes of a monstrous insectoid creature inside. It writhed and squirmed, twisting its 6 legs and pushing against the membrane that kept it entombed within the egg from time to time. Soon I knew that it would push through. How many others had already hatched? How long had this been going on? I had a feeling that we would soon find out. We sprinted into the tunnel, turning on our LED headlamps as we went. Jansen was in the lead in the names, and then me at the rear. Periodically I checked our backs, but nothing seemed to be following us. Not yet, anyways. All the commotion was in front of us. That creature was still shrieking, though the sound was much more muffled and distant now. To my horror, I heard dozens of responses from all around, deeper in various tunnels that branched off from the main chamber or from this one. Some sounded very far away and barely audible, but others seemed much, much closer. I also heard the cries for help from the young boy, though these too grew fainter. We tried running faster, but what could a human's 2 legs do against that skittering monstrosity's 6 legs? Not much, I thought to myself. The tunnel looked empty. That strange mold grew everywhere here as well. We barely even needed the LEDs to see, though it had so many curves and branches that it was difficult to see far anyway.
Alright, what's the lore here? Normally they give us like a little bit of lore, like right at the end of the dungeon after you beat the boss. So let's see what of these 2 numbskulls got to say this time. Or I think it's when I leave. I don't think I meant to leave that. Can I go back, like, right back in there, or is there, like, a quest now? Or is it only to floor 30 they want me to do? I'm not quite sure. I thought I was going to floor 50. Wait, where am I going? What was that? What's the quest? Where are my quests? It's been a hot minute. On the shoulder of giants. Up there, huh? didn't know there would be a quest midway through. I'm just trying to unlock level 50, so it's like I have level 50 queues, and I can't like queue for them at this level, or like how far I am. I need to like have the first 50 floors, so doing that on Pally, or solo it as Pally, because I know I can self-heal. Did he just say Warrior of Warcraft? Am I reading that right? Wait, was that it? I thought they wanted me to go kill something. So can I go queue again? Was that it? Shoulder of the Giants. Where do you want me to go now? Oh, up there. Okay. I mean, we're already up here. I mean, may as well, right? Huh. I haven't been up here yet. Wait, what? Oh, fade. Yeah, no thanks. If there's a way here. Okay. Never been here before, but now we have been. I think that's part of like me getting flying in this area is I gotta like discover the entire map. Wait, what? The fuck? How is this all connected to like the like random dungeon? Fucking heavens on high. There wasn't this much lore for the other one before, or even like the one at level 90. What the hell? I really don't care about this lore. I'm grabbing a beer. my god, it's still going. Who gives a shit about the Onishishu or people? Like, come on, we're Endwalker. This is like Stormblood shit. Is this just like intel on the next floor boss for like floor 31 to 40? I guess we'll figure that out. Teleport back. I ain't running there like a peasant. Oh, Apex. Okay. Okay. let's see if I actually get a queue, because, like, I was waiting in here for, like, over an hour for just floor 1 to, like, 10, so, I don't know, maybe this is better. I'll get some experience for my bard, or I'll have to, like, keep on going for, floor 50 plus through, soloing on my bard. I still have that save file on the bard solo. Oh, I'm taking a piss spirit back. speedrun this shit. 10 minutes? My god. Alright, how much XP does this give me? I don't know if I need to grind to 50. There was a person, I just forget who it was. Oh, it leveled up. We did get a level from that. So, level 62? Yeah, I think we can do like another bard thing, right? Where's all our moves at? This? What do we get at 62? What is this? Defensive cooldown. You got it. I can go there. That was the only new thing we got at 62 then, right? Oh, unless there's like performances or traits. No bite mastery though at 64. Okay, yeah, that upgrades the dots to like superior dots or whatever at 64. I get it. Who is the person? I forget how I whisper the person that was just whispering me. Damn it. I want to be like a dick that's like ignoring them, but I do want to group up with them, but it's like also I have a save file at 31 that would save me so much time. I think I'll solo the next couple of floors and get the little 50 dungeons unlocked, and then I might build, then I can queue them up as bard, and then I'll get like more experience per hour. Like we're working with like experience. It's gonna be over 1 million experience every level from this point on, so may as well. Alright, heaven's on high. I want this one, right? Alright, instantly, okay. 31 to 40. Let's get this going. I was still listening to this.
Every 100 feet or so, another wall appeared, always curving to the left or to the right. As we ran, I saw glimmers of what looked like red eyes from some of these smaller side tunnels, but whenever I turned to look, they were gone. It was the same with those who might have followed us. I thought that I saw glimpses of a long white hand or a lipless face for a moment, but when I pointed the gun, The thing had slunk back into the shadows or deeper into one of the endless branching tunnels and disappeared around corners in an instant. The shrieking of the beast had faded into the distance, and an eerie silence descended like a fog. We had all stopped by this point at an intersection of the cave system. One tunnel went off to the left at a right angle, the other to the right at a right angle, and then we had the larger main tunnel that we were following that extended in front of and behind us. Luckily, we hadn't yet deviated from the main tunnel, so finding our way back should be relatively easy. It felt substantially hotter down here as well. We had descended deeper into the chain of mountains that ran northwards, parallel to the Arctic Ocean. I had opened all of my jackets and taken off my hat, but still felt boiling hot. I could tell that the other two did as well. Trickles of sweat beaded their faces and they were ripping off layers of clothing. They threw a couple jackets on the ground, not wanting to carry them for God knows how long. If we made it out of here, I thought that they might regret it. But after miles of walking, I too threw a couple jackets on the ground and left them. After all, when we came back this way to return to this snowmobile, we could just grab them again. Except, of course, we never did come back that way. God dang, they said. Well, we've lost the kid. Let's go back and report. We should be able to find the signal with the sat phone somewhere in the area. I wish that we had, but at that moment, circumstances beyond our control sealed our fate. It started with a small tremble, almost imperceptible. I looked around at the glowing purplish walls and the strange mossy molds that covered everything. Some of them lost connection with the walls as the shaking grew stronger. As soon as their root system stopped touching the stone and earth, the round cluster of detached mold would instantly go dark. Their black light illumination shut off like a switch when it stopped being anchored into the stone tunnel. Earthquake, I shouted, but Jansen and Ace clearly already knew. We looked around for someplace safe. We ducked into a side tunnel where the ground was more stable. Behind us, rocks smashed into the ground, knocked out of place after who knows how many years. It became a continuous cacophony. We ran faster and finally something behind us seemed to let go. The entire main tunnel sounded like it was collapsing. Some small pebbles and rocks dislodged and hit me in the face and chest as I ran. But it became increasingly clear that whatever fault line had slipped had been further back, running underneath the main northwards tunnel. It sounded like tons of dirt and stone had collapsed, and then as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. A few small aftershocks shook the area slightly, but as a whole it seemed like we were safe. We all had our LED headlamps on as we made our way back to the main tunnel, hoping that there was a way out. We had to get to the snowmobiles, and more importantly, we needed help. There might be more people imprisoned or taken hostage down here for all I knew. Is everyone okay? I said. Fine, Jansen said, wiping dirt off her face. A small trickle of blood ran down her forehead. Jesus, the main tunnel, they said, walking slowly out of the small tunnel that we had sought refuge in. Look at it. I came up behind him, unsurprised to see tons of rock spilling out towards us, with smaller boulders and pebbles and mirrors, and huge pieces as tall as a man appearing further in. We're going to need to find another way back, I said. We can't go back, Jansen said. There's a hostage in here. Then how do you expect us to find him? Ace asked. These tunnels could go for 100 miles in every direction for all we know. I felt another tremble below our feet as a small aftershock passed through the area, sending a few smaller stones rolling and tumbling around us. But we had come this far after all. We're going to get that kid back, I said. We've already come this far and the way back is blocked anyways. We're going to need to find another way out. There has to be other entrances to this cave system. But what I really thought about was the horror stories that I had heard about the Paris catacombs. How occasionally somebody would find themselves lost in them. Countless random twists and turns through the darkness below the city, combined with many miles of tunnels, meant that very few who found themselves alone and lost down there made it back. They often starved or died from dehydration, their bones inevitably mixed in with the hundreds of thousands of others, rescued eternally under the bustling cityscape above. After resting, we started moving forward together. Morale felt low, and even Ace looked sullen and thoughtful. We continued on in the main tunnel.
I'm listening to a dude narrating a spooky pasta.
But we hadn't heard a single sound from the creature.
It's like, I don't know if it's a new one, but I think I just looked at it on my
the tunnel ahead of us started.
Yeah, it's called I Worked as a Park Ranger in Alaska. There were inhuman things living there.
Growing in shapes like ant mounds that reached nearly up to my neck. A soft sound began to echo back. It sounded like the babbling of a subterranean brook. Running forward, I shone the light into the stream and felt relieved to see that it was full of pure and clean water. I began to greedily shove handfuls of water into my mouth. I saw Ace and Jansen follow my lead. After all the running and fighting, I felt hungry, thirsty, and tired. Looking up, I saw there was a primitive bridge against the stream, made of a slab of granite, and beyond I saw something that took my breath away. There was a cathedral down here, or at least something close to it. Hundreds of eggs stretched across the right and left sides of the chamber, like pews in a church. They were organized in lines with a 10-foot wide empty path leading further in. Hundreds of feet above us, sharp stalactites hung from the ceiling, glowing in the purplish light of the mole who climbed the walls and thin streamers. At the end of the open chamber, a few hundred feet away, I saw a carving that stretched to the ceiling. Hewn from pure stone, it showed one of those insectile, egg-laying monsters. It showed it standing up straight with its thin, branching arms stretched out to the ceiling above it. Its oval eyes, wide and its huge mouth, stretched open wide to show its countless predator's teeth. Below it, I saw one of the white humanoid creatures. This one wore a coarse brown robe, the first one of its kind that I had ever seen clothed. It was so still that I thought it was part of the carving at first, that they had created a religious icon showing these creatures serving their great and horrible masters. But then it turned toward us. We all raised our guns at once. "Freeze!" Jansen cried. I saw her finger tightened around the trigger. "Don't," I said. "It's unarmed. Wait." I felt eyes on me from all around me, but when I turned to check our backs, I saw nothing. We started walking forward towards the robed mutant. As we got closer to the front, I saw more and more of the eggs appeared empty. The ones in the back all had life inside. Life that pushed against the thin membranes and whose legs skittered eerily in the amniotic fluid that they breathed. "Why should we let it live?" Jansen objected angrily under her breath as we moved forward in unison. "These things killed that family, and who knows how many others." When I think back to all the unsolved missing persons cases in this county, I knew what she meant. The same thought had occurred to me. How many people have these creatures killed? The mutant in the brown robe stood there, his lipless mouth forming a cold sneer as he looked me up and down. Its strange eyes seemed to bulge from its emaciated face. When I got close enough, I realized that they had almost an albino look to them, with blood-red irises that faded towards pink as they neared the center. The pupils seemed to glow, reflecting the eerie light of the mold. I didn't know what to do next. The creature in front of me spoke first, however. "They are our gods," he croaked. From the depth of his voice and the cast of his body, I had figured out that this was probably a male among the species. The way he spoke reminded me of how deaf people sometimes sounded when they spoke. The words sounded strange with random pauses and changes in cadence, making it hard to understand at times, but it was definitely English. "Who are you?" I asked. "What is this place?" He shook his head, pointing to the huge carving behind him. "Gods," he said. "We feed, and they protect." "Well, they haven't done a very good job so far," Ace whispered in my ear. "Those huge bugs just ran screaming when we started shooting." I ignored this. "What are you?" I asked, hoping for an actual response, and this time I got one. "We are the Keepers," he said slowly, thoughtfully, looking up at the huge carving. "And these are necrovores." He shook his head again, an expression crossing his face that looked very human. Was it regret, fear? "And they're hungry, so hungry." As if on cue, I heard the skittering of many legs behind me. Spinning around quickly, I saw that while we had been distracted, some of what he called the necrovores had surrounded us in a semicircle, cutting off any retreat. They looked much smaller than the original one that we had seen, and I assumed that they were likely juveniles. "Behind you," I screamed to my team, but they had already heard where I had. I raised my shotgun, firing a slug into the nearest one's curved red face. It went between its eyes, and for a moment, I could see a clear hole all the way through behind it to the stone walls surrounding us. And then it crumbled, its legs shaking spasmodically in its death throes. Its arms moving back and forth in small arcs quickly, as if it had a seizure in its last dying moments. Dozens of them appeared, and the speed at which they ran at us looked eerie. All I would see was a red blur and the flash of many branching legs, and an instant later, I would see one of those abominations flying through the air, with the jaws opened and claws raised forwards. The guns fired quickly, dropping a dozen in the space of a few seconds, and slowing the ones behind it enough for us to have a chance. But they skittered so fast, like huge spiders. Their many legs shuffled and cracked against the stone floors, and they leapt at us. I dodged one, sidestepping it and shooting it in the head with a shotgun blast. Its dark red eyes looked at me from its angular face, as a giant exit wound exploded from the back of its mouth. Shrieking, it fell. Ace wasn't so lucky. One jumped at him, slashing with its sharp claws and unhinging its jaw. In a blur, I saw it grab his left arm, slicing through the cloth and skin easily. A spray of blood shot into the air. "Ace, no!" I screamed, chambering another round and firing. I hit the beast in the center of its body. It gurgled and spit as blood poured out of it. It tried to get up and keep fighting, but its legs gave out underneath it, and I watched it for a moment as it lay on the floor, kicking and dying. Ace had reloaded and turned, taking down another one with a direct shot. Jansen dropped the last two, and then suddenly everything was quiet again. Only the ringing in my ears from all the gunfire broke it. I ran over to Ace, looking at his arm. He winced, pulling back his sleeve. I saw a deep gouge mark, the slice cutting nearly to the bone. Blood spurted out in time with his heartbeat, but it didn't look like any arteries had been severed. We quickly applied pressure in the tourniquet, and after many minutes of resting and attending to his wound, the bleeding had slowed. We sat among all the dead and necrovores. The strange priest had disappeared in the fighting, slinking away in one of the tunnels behind the carving. "We need to find food and water," I said. "There may be more underground streams if we're lucky, but food? What are we going to do, cook a necrovore?" I looked at the corpse of the nearest one disdainfully as I spoke. "If we have to," Jensen said. "I'm not dying down here, not unless I have to." "That's funny," Ace said, looking at his injured arm. "Because you were the one who acted all gung-ho to come down here in the first place, even before we saw the boy, who, by the way, we have seen no sign of. This has all been a wild goose chase, an insane wild goose chase to God knows where, and probably death. Or the seventh circle of the nether. Maybe. I said jokingly, but no one smiled. We continued walking. Eventually, we heard a soft babbling and found a small stream running through a side tunnel. We cleaned Ace's wound as best as we could, drinking as much of the clean, clear water as possible. But hunger began affecting me. I wonder if we really would have to try eating those strange red beasts if it came down to it. Maybe they would taste like lobster, I thought to myself with a smile. But our problems only got worse from there. Ace's wound looked terrible. Red inflamed patches of skin rose all around the slice, and the veins seemed to be discolored as they led away from it. Oh, nothing to worry about. Ace smiled. It's only a flesh wound. But in fact, I did worry, and it got worse as we went on. After a couple more hours of walking, it started to really smell, and I saw pus and black spots beginning to spread on his arm. I had never seen an infection set in so rapidly and spread so quickly before. I wondered what kind of exotic, alien bacteria might be on those creatures, and I shuddered. We rested, finding an empty side of the tunnel and laying down. Ace and I were far away from Jansen, who had wandered away down the tunnel a few hundred feet, maybe to use the bathroom in private. I don't trust her, Ace whispered. Yeah, neither do I. I think she knows more than she lets on. The whole thing seems weird, Ace said, looking down at his arm for the 100th time, frowning and wincing. But I think that you might find you need her. I'm certainly not in much of a condition to help you. After resting for a while, we got back up and started on down the tunnel again. The endless growths of mold still giving us enough illumination to see ahead without our headlamps. I tried to conserve the battery as much as possible. Ace quickly grew so sick that he staggered, bending over and retching occasionally.
Spent like I don't know how fucking long.
And he swayed on his feet whenever
20
he stood
minutes
straight.
or something in there to die.
I looked at his wound and
That's kind of
gasped.
some bullshit.
I thought about the medical terms that I had heard.
Call it a
Suppuration,
stream.
the wound
Yeah, it's
discharging
like a
pus,
90-minute
draining the
stream,
fluids
not
of
bad.
dying tissue and leaking it all over his skin.